Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How's everybody?
Good. How are you?
I'm excited to be here. All right, I'm back again. I was just talking with the principal from Durham.
Oh, wonderful.
She's at
Good
elementary
people.
school. She was doing a reference check on one of our students. Andrelicia Glass, were you with me when we did that group?
Glass.
Was that in the fall? I think we did that group in the fall. She was.
I wasn't with you in the fall.
All right. So
Just spring and summer.
She came through. I think she was with us in the fall. But yeah, lady from the elementary school just called me.
Awesome.
So doing those what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, doing those reference checks that you're required to do. So she was making.
And we're trying to fill positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? I was talking with somebody today. You know, I hate to say it, but if you're in a border county to South Carolina, it's going to get a lot harder because their rules on advanced degrees are so much better than in North Carolina. If you got people with advanced degrees, I mean, they're pulling people out of retirement. They're pulling people out of colleges. A colleague of mine at a college, they're paying him $15,000 more than his college is paying.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Carolina. Yeah, it's real money. They're paying real money to teach in South Carolina now. They're gonna, they've got a problem, but they're gonna solve it.
Yeah, they're gonna take all the good teachers and administrators away.
Experienced ones, down, if you don't have advanced degrees, it's not that big a pay jump. But that's where they have the advantage. They pay for your masters. They pay for 30 hours past masters, like if you got a specialist, and they'll pay for your doctorate. It doesn't matter as long as you got a teaching certificate. You're good to go there. And so, and they just added another step. If you've got 20, they'll transfer you years in where North Carolina won't. They'll transfer you years in, and they're also doing a thing in South Carolina that's just starting. where, it takes 8 years to get vested in their retirement rather than 10. But
Okay.
if you like coming, this is to get people coming out of colleges. So what they're doing now in South Carolina is if you go to South Carolina, you can opt to be in their state retirement system and try to get 8 years to get vested, or you can roll theirs into your TIAFF account from college and just keep on adding to that account. And so they've got it figured out on both ends in terms of the money, the salary, and the retirement piece.
The two most important things, especially for an experienced
exactly,
educator.
and they're
those
granting,
two.
They're granting years of experience. They've added another step for 25 plus. They've added, to try to get retirees or people who are retired or going to retire or can retire in North Carolina. They've added another step for them, $2,500 boost. They've worked out their retirement system. South Carolina's going to wear us out. I'm just telling you, they're just going to wear us out. And we're going the other way in North Carolina, freezing people's salary at 20 years, making them pay back that $5,000 loan they got as a beginning teacher, to get their salary up from 30 to 35.
Right. And then those steps after like
years.
20 something, just just stagnant.
Your salary is frozen from year 20 to year 30 in North Carolina.
Yep.
And then South Carolina's going the other way. They're doing everything they can. And so, South Carolina won't have a shortage for long. I can tell you that. With the things that they're doing, very aggressive, very forward thinking. But, hey, I will go back to what I've been saying for quite a while is, if you're willing to pay people, there's no shortage of labor if you're willing to pay. Now, there's a shortage of people that are willing to pay for what you work for, what you'll pay them. That's where the shortage is. But if you will pay, you get all the help you want, doing anything you want. If you will pay. And so so South Carolina figured that out quick. Daniel, you had a question?
No, I'll just add to the conversation where I lead a team of 40 people and I get paid less than the other people on my team. And I work 12 months and I have people work 10 months and they've got their masters and their national board pay, and I get none of that. I get my masters, but I don't get my national board pay, even though I'm national board certified.
I feel you. I am too. And no, we don't get that.
This sucks.
Yeah. I mean, North Carolina does everything they can to drive people away. Whereas South Carolina is going, please come here.
And on the other border, Virginia is ramping up a little bit of something, because my sister is retiring early she was over principals in Alamance, Burlington, and she's retiring early to go to Virginia to do a similar job. But like Daniel said, she had some principals that were making more than she was, and she's the supervisor. So, it's just that balance. She left. She's getting paid. I mean, she's getting a nice jump in salary.
Yeah. I mean, there's people out there, if you'll pay them, they'll come. That's amazing how that works. If you'll pay, they'll come. I mean, and you can solve your personnel problems if you want to.
Right.
But again, it's, we can't find people to work. You need to say the corollary for what we're willing to pay. That's the only shortage there is. There's plenty of teachers. But again, but one of the things that North Carolina, they don't really, they're not really interested. But what they need to understand too is they're not just competing with border states. They're competing with other businesses as well. I mean, you can go to the bank and be a teller and make what a beginning teacher does. And don't have to do PD or ball games or any of that stuff. You work a set period of time. And so, schools are losing out to not only other states but they're also losing out to other businesses as well. And so we have a charter school that direction across the lake. They don't pay, they differentiate their pay. And so the people that they really need, they pay them more than public school will pay. So they don't have a problem getting people. over at Lincoln Charter. I mean, you know, they don't, I won't say that they pay everybody well, but the people that they need, the people who are critical to their organization, they pay them well. And so, again, if you're willing to pay, you can find all the folks you want. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We'll go ahead and get started. Before we get to Dr. Griffin Jordan's presentation tonight, let me share my screen and let's go over our weekly schedule and see where we are. Here it is. And so we are now in week 5. This is the halfway point of our classes. Tonight we're going to do bullying, cyberbullying, harassment. Next week we're going to, we'll do our second case study. I'll talk about it in a minute, and then we'll do managing student conduct in facilities. And then we'll have our 4th of July holiday week, and then we'll do our third case study, and then we'll do liability, and then our 4th case study wraps us up for the summer. So that's where we are. So this week you were to look at cyberbullying policy, or you're supposed to going forward to look at that. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's take a look back at our last one. We have already done intervention in EC. We've already had that night. So looking forward on to cyberbullying and bullying. The biggest mistake that I have found that students make is there's this urban legend going around for some reason that the cyberbullying law was repealed. It was not. There was one section in it that was amended. And the section that was amended is if you're in a Twitter war with somebody else and you start losing, you can't claim that you were bullied. That's the only thing that was amended. The cyberbullying law is still on the books. And so let me show you that. And then we'll break it down from there. And so let me switch back over to this browser. And so this is General Statute 158.1 in North Carolina. There's a similar one in South Carolina. Now, you'll notice it doesn't say anything about that it had where it occurred or what equipment was used. That's the second false narrative of people who don't want to deal with. The first false narrative of people who refuse in schools to deal with cyberbullying is, oh, that law was repealed. That is not true. And just complete falsehood. That's just a complete falsehood. All right, the second falsehood is, well, if it didn't happen here at school, then I don't have to deal with it. That's a lie too. Where it happened or what equipment was used is immaterial. If it happened, then you got to deal with it. And it even, I'll show you in the state statute where it says if it disrupts your school day, then you got to deal with it. And if somebody brings it to you at your school, that means it's disrupted your day. You've got to deal with it. Again, the false narratives are the law's not on the books. It is. The false narrative is if it didn't happen in school, I don't have to deal with it. Or if we can't prove that they used if they didn't use a school device to do it, then I don't know. None of those things matter. If it happened, you must deal with it, period. Here is the law. It says that defines cyberbullying. It's against the law. Can't do any of these things. If a parent brings these things to you for an underage child, then you must deal with it, period. There's no exception to that. There's no, well, what if? There is no what ifs. Before you start what ifing me, there are no what ifs. If a parent brings or a kid brings this to you, you must deal with it, period. All right, so let's look at it a little more fully so I can close that and let me pull this one up. So here's the law again, and all these things that would define it as cyberbullying. Now, this is from the manual that I'm going to show you in a minute. This is from your disciplinary data reporting manual, and it says, the School Violence Prevention Act defines bullying, and it talks about cyberbullying, and it can be reported along with other acts, and it goes through all that stuff. But what it says is, if it creates or is certain to create a hostile environment where interfering impaired students' educational performance or benefits, then you got to deal with it, period. So if somebody brings it to you, there is no excuse. You can't say, well, that's not my problem, or you can't pretend that they didn't. You must deal with cyberbullying, and you need to understand that. It is very hard. It is very prevalent, unfortunately. So now, but it's not new. I'm going to show you something now. I am not Karnak the Magnificent. You don't know that from the old Johnny Carson show. I am not clairvoyant. I'm not all-knowing. I put this presentation together for the state of North Carolina in 2011. That would be how many? 12 years ago, I put this presentation together. I was the keynote at the Helpful Living, the big one they do at Curry and Greensboro. And so this is the presentation that I did that basically said, this is what's coming, folks. And really all I was doing was hollering duck or look out. 12 years ago, identification and prevention of antecedent behaviors, the little things that become the big things, that become those persistently dangerous things. These are the things that cause those. This is from, again, 12 years ago. Cyberbullying, bullying, sexual harassment, sexting, using your phone, and gang activity. That's from 12 years ago. This is not new, folks. I had compiled the data from the largest district in the state that I was in charge of. I had compiled the data, and this is what it told me. This is not new. It's only gotten worse over the last 12 years. But these are the things that cause you the most serious incidents on your campus. Those persistently dangerous, those assaults with weapons, those the sexual stuff, the rape, sexual assault, sexual offense, kidnapping, death, all those things. The last kid at Butler walked in and shot the kid, had been bullied, cyberbullied. He was being cyberbullied. He walked in and shot the kid dead right there. Didn't say peep to anybody right there in the lobby of the high school. So this right here, these are the four things that will lead you to those persistently dangerous things. Remembering what they are. Let's see. Let me pop those up for you right here. This is what these things lead to: homicide, suicide. You noticed the lawsuit this week on a kid that killed himself was being bullied at school, and she's now suing the school district and the administrators for not acting on it. That was yesterday's news. That wasn't a month ago or a year ago. That was yesterday. Assault involving serious bodily injury, assault using a weapon, rape, sexual offense, sexual assault, kidnapping, robbery, indecent liberties. These are the things that come out of gang activity, sexual stuff, and cyberbullying. Those are the three hot topics, folks. These are the things that happen if you don't get a handle on this stuff. If you ignore it, oh, it'll go away, or it's not my problem, not my duty. So you need to research what happens in your district, how it's supposed to be handled. Now, again, I'm going to morph over to sexual harassment right quick. These are all under tonight. On sexual harassment, you got to deal with it. And Title IX, the new Title IX law says, if I can find it without having to take too long here. Get out of the way. Here. While colleges ramped up the hiring of officials dedicated to Title IX, to sexual stuff, over the past decade, school districts largely did not. And many of the new rules require a big adjustment in how K-12 administrators deal with those cases. And so what that means is that you have to take those reports seriously. You have to report them to law enforcement, and that you cannot be the person who makes the same right here. The person who investigates a sexual assault case under Title IX cannot be the same person who decides whether the accused student is responsible. So what that means is when you get a report of sexual assault, sexual harassment, any of the sexual stuff, what you should do is immediately report it to police, because it is a violation of the law, the penal code, and then you report it to your district so they can go in. Don't start an investigation on your own. You can't be the person who investigates and determines if it's the one that whether it happened or not. That has to be separate from you. That's the law. That's the updated Title IX law. One of the worst things that happens is, I'll handle this in-house myself. It's against the law to do that. You must involve law enforcement, and you must tell your people in your district, and they'll send somebody out to investigate. You are not qualified to investigate sexual matter stuff. You just aren't. You need to move it on. And then I get students who say to me, but what about sexual harassment? I can investigate. No, because the problem with trying to investigate sexual harassment, as soon as, this person's saying bad things about me, inappropriate sexual stuff. Okay, then you start the investigation. The first thing you find out is he or she grabbed me or touched me. Uh-oh. What are you going to do now, hero? It's no longer sexual harassment. Now it's sexual assault. Uh-oh. Sexual assault, that's for law enforcement. But you've already started an investigation. Uh-oh. If you don't think law enforcement won't throw you under the bus and back it over you, if you foul up their investigation, that will not go well for you. So anytime you get sexual stuff, you better hand it to the police. And if they say, I don't know about that, you need to get it, then you go investigate it. Or you call your district and then they'll send somebody. Or if they tell you to do it, then that's fine. But, the first two is, did law enforcement want to? No, they passed. Did the district want to? No, they passed. Then it's on to you to do that. But you better give them the opportunity to pass. You better not say, well, I don't want people to know about this. This is a bad PR look for our school. I'll do this in-house. Oh, no. Oh, no. There is no in-house things. We got to make sure we do that. Because if you try to do that in-house business, this is what happens to you. By the way, this woman got 2 years in prison. Assistant principal accused of not reporting student sexual abuse claims appears in court. She got 2 years. No, she got 3 and served 2, by the way. That's what we're talking about right here. She didn't bother to report it to law enforcement. She didn't bother to report it to the district. She tried to hide it. She did 2 years in prison. So that's what we're talking about here. Not just talking about losing your house. We're talking about losing your liberty as well. Better understand that. This is a normal. So cyberbullying, whether sexual stuff, sexual bullying, sexual harassment, all those kinds of things. The protocol is to involve the police. Number one, they have warrant powers that you don't have as you need to involve them. From my hometown here in Cornelius, AP that I trained was over at the high school at Huff. He saw a kid, everybody hung around this kid with his phone. He got the phone, turned it over to the resource officer. They found pictures of girls. He was extorting girls at the middle school, underage girls. He was 18 to have sex with him. He'd get them to send pictures and then threaten. He was blackmailing. He's still in jail, by the way. He got 6 years. And so that's what we're talking about here. They've got warrant powers that you don't. Your district can come in. Title IX says you can't investigate this stuff. You can't be the person that, because you're the person who, this goes on the data for your school, on the persistently dangerous or goes against you. You're more likely to find in your own favor that no, nothing happened, nothing to see here, than somebody independent. And so that's why the law says you can't be the one investigating this stuff. So please remember that. But find out what the protocol is in your district. So here is in our manual where it talks all about these things, what you've got to do. I'm going to go over this in detail next week. This is the disciplinary data reporting manual that has all these procedures, talks about bullying and cyberbullying, reportable offenses. I'm going to cover all of this next week. It's under this week as well. You need to read it and look at it. But this is the Bible about all the things that can't happen in schools. It has very detailed explanations of those acts of crime and violence in the back. Let's see, right here, what they are. It has very detailed about what's not allowed in school. They had them carry, the most serious is PD, persistently dangerous. That counts against your persistently dangerous calculation for the federal government. Remember, in 1991, No Child Left Behind said kids don't have to go to low performing schools or dangerous schools. Schools that are persistently dangerous have too many of these kinds of things happen. You get one incident or 5 per 1,000, 1 for every 200, which is a half of 1%. If you exceed that on a yearly basis, you go on the watch list. You do it twice, they'll reconstitute your school, which means they'll dismiss your administrative team. So You have to self-report this stuff. There's a reason why people don't want to self-report. There's a reason why they try to cover it up. There's a reason why they kind of categorize it for something less than or don't want to tell the police, because there's sanctions if these things keep happening in their building. Well, the way to address that is not to hide them up or cover them up. It's to deal with the little things that are eventually going to become the big things. That's what my presentation was about 12 years ago, is that if you hide this stuff, you're going to get caught. If you cover it up, you're going to get caught. And you may end up in prison like that assistant principal out in Colorado fairly recently. The way to deal with it is stop the little things before they become the big things. That's the law of antecedent behavior. The little precedes the big. But we categorize all the misbehavior types in school as either persistently dangerous, reportable offense to law enforcement, or unacceptable behavior. Now, again, the state does not set the punishment for those. They just define what it is. The punishment for these, as we learned last week, is in your code of conduct for your district. It has all of these same infractions in it, and it tells what your parameters are, your metrics in terms of what tier it's on. Right here it is. So while the state says these are the things that school administrators are not to allow in their building and are to report to us, they don't say what the consequences are. Your local board determines through the code of conduct what those consequences are. So everybody's got a code of conduct for their district. Now, you got to put it into the Power School. I can't show you Power School. I can show you NCWise, which was the parent of Power School. But you've got to go in and enter all this stuff in. And here, you notice the screens look just like Power School does now. But here's what the manual, when I trained beginning administrators years ago, here's what the manual looks like. It's very involved. It does not look like your Power School portal as a teacher. It's a separate module. It's an administrator module. It is very, very in-depth. It is not intuitive. It is not menu-driven for security purposes. You have to learn it. That's going to be one of those things when you're first on the job as an AP. You need to learn teacher observation. This is how that system works. Second thing, you need to learn how Power School works so you can enter disciplinary data in. Those are things you're going to need. You can get your administrators to show you those now, but they won't let you have one because you're not a licensed administrator. But I'm telling you, it's not menu driven. It's not logic based model. You got to know where to go. Several screens just to put one incident in. It'll be slow when you first start, but you'll eventually get the hang of it and go faster. But you can't let those things sit around. 24/48. If it's a persistently dangerous or a reportable offense, it's got to be in within 24 hours. It's got to be in the system. If it's all others, it's got to be within 48 hours. If not, you have not observed due process. So you got to understand that. It's not something you can just put them on your desk or in a drawer till Friday or next Friday or Friday week or month. 24/48. That's a reasonable expectation. That's due process. In order to observe due process, those things have got to be put into Power School. Now, Power School is the only thing that generates an official suspension form. Don't tell me that, we make our own or we've got, no. In a court of law, the only thing that is recognized in a court of law is one that comes out of Power School for a public school. You've got to put it in there in order to generate the out-of-school suspension form. You can't make your own. You can't be bootlegging suspension. You got to understand that as well. We're going to cover all these things in depth next week, but this is all part and parcel of, we start our introduction into bullying, cyberbullying, and then we'll get into discipline. But understanding there's a manual that's over 100 pages long, with everything about discipline in it, even exceptional children's, alternative schools, how to report, what report, all that stuff. Then there's a separate manual on code of conduct on what consequences you can give. And again, we got to stay in the parameters so we're not arbitrary and capricious, like from last week's case study. We can't give 10-day suspension for smoking or shoot me. That's capricious. That's too much. So we're developing. All these things have to go together. But there's where we're headed this semester. Let me see if there's anything else that I've missed here that I had prompted for us tonight. Again, all these things are under this week. All right, so I think I've covered all that stuff. Yep, I have. We're good to go on that. All right. Now, I want to talk about last week's case study right quick, and then we'll talk about next week's. Last week's case study was a case of malpractice, of malfeasance. So there's three standards for negligence. You know, malfeasance, you did the wrong thing intentionally. Misfeasance, you did the wrong thing you didn't intend to. And nonfeasance, you had a duty to act and you didn't. Those are the three standards of negligence. You got to understand that. For tort liability, that means lose your house, lose your money, lose your job. For that liability. Malfeasance, did the wrong thing intentionally. That was our first case. Our case coming up this week is going to be a case of misfeasance. The superintendent didn't know it, but he did the wrong thing. And then our last two cases, our third case is all three. And then our last case is simply a case of nonfeasance, where she had a duty to act and didn't. So again, to recap from last week, not to beat a dead horse, but last week was, a teacher taking a run at a kid. Nobody had any culpability except her in terms of law breaking. Now, the kid had culpability for turning in his brother's homework, but not to fail for a whole year. Now, a couple of points that were brought out. It doesn't matter that the teacher was planning to do this. Teachers don't assign final grades. She'd already said this is what he gets. She was asking the principal to support that, so it was already a done deal. That's number one. Planning we're not playing semantics here. Number two, on the case and kind of the final thought on that case last week. This is really about what are you going to do? What is where inside you is the line that folks can't cross? This notion that, well, he can go to summer school. That's not part of it. That you offer, less than that should not be a determining factor. You fail a kid for the year over turning his brother's out of class or homework assignments, once you refer to it, that he's allowed to go to summer school to make it up is immaterial. That's not a part of the argument here. What are you going to do to a teacher that would do that? That would be that egregious in their treatment of a kid in your building. And, what are you going to do? That's what this case boils down to. All right, let's talk about next week's case quickly. I've got my eye here on our time. Dr. Griffin, get ready to get you started. Next week is a funding case. Now, understanding that the watershed case in the United States of America is in North Carolina, where the constitutionality of flat grant funding, where you just give it for every kid that attends in a public school in North Carolina, same in South Carolina, you get a flat fee for them, whether they're rich, poor, at risk, doesn't matter. You get a per dollar figure for every child. The poor districts in North Carolina 30 years ago this year sued the state of North Carolina and said, we don't have the money to put with the state money, so our kids aren't getting as much as people elsewhere. The Leandro case, it drug on for 3.5 years in court, and finally in 1997, it was determined that the state did not have to change the funding formula. Not only that, they also held, and this is right there in front of you, the Duke Law adjudication that tells what was held, that summarizes the case. Not only will the state not vary the amount of money per kid, but you can't do it at the local either. That only the state can do that. Now, you can't move federal money. And if you move teachers around or try to move it, that's going to be federal. You're not allowed to do that. It tracks with the kid as well. State money tracks with the kid. You could potentially move a little bit of discretionary local money, but not across the whole district, because that would violate the Leandro law of districts trying to regulate the money themselves. Now, you can put a little money into special programs, because the superintendent can spend up to $90,000 in discretionary money. And that's what he had done the year before. But when you start trying to vary the money for the whole district, that this group of kids gets more money from this group, and we had to take it from this group to give to them, that's against the law. Can't do that. And where does it say that? Well, I'll show you right here. So this is under case study 2. This is from Duke. This is from Duke Law School, and it says clearly right here. School districts nor counties have any constitutional right to equal funding. Now you say, but Dale, they give them the same amount in the end. So what happens is, we're going to use round numbers here. The state gives you $8,000 a year per kid. If you're a wealthy district, you can add another 4, and so you know your cost, you're spending $12,000 to educate a kid. Because in 1966 the state got out of capital funding and doesn't build schools, poor district, it takes all the money that they've got to keep their buildings up, and so they can't add any money for the instructional program. So their kids only get $8,000 to try to educate them. And there's about a $4,000 discrepancy between what the wealthy districts spend per kid and what the poor districts. And that's what Leandro said. We want you to take 2 from them and give that 2 to us. And so we both end up with 10 rather than them 12 and us 8. We want both of us to have 10. And the court said, no, you have no right to equal funding. You have the right to a basic ed, and the state will send you that money. That's that $8,000. That's all you have the right to. If you happen to live in a high wealth district that can spend more than that, good for you. But if you don't, the state will not go to the rich and take from them and give to the poor. That's the crux of this case. Now, that's what the superintendent wanted to do. I mean, it might be a worthwhile kind of thing to want to do that. And it might be that we support him. Yay, he's trying to do something for at-risk kids, but he's violating state law. And if he moves any of the federal programs or the money with them, he's violating federal law. You say, but he ran a pilot. We run pilots all the time where we take that discretionary $90,000, but that can't become a part of $90,000 all the time. And so what I did was, let me go back here, case study 2. This is a very recent case from North Carolina where the superintendent tried to do exactly that in Chapel Hill, Carrboro. So she wanted to be able to do this for the whole district, and she knows she only had 90,000. So what she did was she didn't hire any additional teachers. She went to a private company who brought in additional teachers, and they did a contract where she paid, slightly less than $90,000, for out of several payments, up to about $1 million. Well, that violated state law. They immediately fired the district's finance officer. They allowed her to take sick leave and then resign, but she had to go because she violated the Leandro law, which is you cannot take from one group and give to another. Everybody has to get the money that's designated for them. And since school boards are unempowered in North and South Carolina, they aren't and their money comes from the county commissioners. County commissioners are not going to let you do that either with local money, because that would violate their district policies as well. So you can't move federal money, you can't move state money, you can't move local money. This is what the superintendent wants to do. He's going to have to move all 3. You need to track Leandro. You need to learn about Leandro. You need to learn about why we do what we do. But in the end, a child is only guaranteed a basic education, and the state, and you say, well, how much does that cost? Well, whatever the state says it is. Right now, they say it's $8,000. The kids here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, they're spending about $13,000 a piece on them because we pay the highest tax rate in the state. Well, that's just, and there's plenty of tax base here. We're willing to do that, though. If you don't want to, you move out of Mecklenburg County. But if you live here, you're expected to pay your taxes and support schools. We want good schools here. I live in the town of Cornelius, which has the highest tax rate of any town in Mecklenburg County, including Charlotte. And we don't complain. We want great schools. And so for some of you who live in more rural areas of North and South Carolina, I'm quite sure I pay over twice as much property tax as you do, the millage. And then the evaluation on my home is probably twice what it would be in your district as well. And so my property tax bill every year looks like the value of your car. But I'm not complaining. We have great schools here. We pay teachers well, we pay supplements, We have great facilities, computers, buildings. We have everything you want for a child. If your child doesn't succeed here, it's because they don't want to, or because you're not interested in their education. Now, I can't say that for everywhere. But again, we can't take from the people who are willing to pay and give to the people who aren't. It might be the right thing to do. I might even support that notion, but it's against the law. So make sure you understand that when you dive into the court case for next week. All right, Dr. Griffin Jordan, if there are no questions, you are on tonight.
All right. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Make sure it's up. I'm going to go over some of the things Dr. Lamb has already discussed. And then after I do that, we are going to have a discussion. I'm going to get your feedback on some current cases. So let's see. All righty. So we're going to talk about harassment, bullying, cyberbullying, and I added in discrimination. Every conversation that we have in this class, it's all practical information. It's all information that you need to know and you need to understand when you're considering jumping into that role of administration. As Dr. Lamb has mentioned many times, this is you. This is going to save you. This is going to save your house. And a lot of times it could save your freedom. So please take it all in. Always ask questions. Never go at these types of things alone. When you're dealing with harassment and discrimination, law enforcement needs to be involved. Okay. So just to start, I'm going to look at, just to remind you, and I think Dr. Lamb mentioned this again, you can be sued, okay? Supreme Court ruled that schools can be sued for failure to stop harassment. This is a June 2021 case. This came out of the Carolina Journal. Unanimously, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that public school students can sue their school board for ignoring harassment from other students that blocks their access to a sound basic education. That sound basic education you have a right to. So students and their parents can sue the school system if these sound basic rights are not met. And it goes into, for this presentation, pretty much everything is linkable. The 16-page opinion, you can go to that. The Carolina Journal, you can go to that to get more information, but I just kind of gave you a little synopsis here. In his opinion, he detailed the alleged harassment. He says that in addition to being physically grabbed and pushed, interrupted during tests, and otherwise bothered by fellow students, the plaintiff's son faced additional harassment based on lewd sexual conduct and commentary. The student and the mother repeatedly informed the teacher. So they've reported it to the teacher. They reported it to the principal. They let the assistant principal know. And how about this? The Pitt County School Board was also aware. So possibly the parents wrote a letter to the Board of Education, the school board, letting them know about this. Nothing happened to fix the problem. And the school personnel insisted that there was a process that would take time. That is never, ever, ever a good response, that we will get to you, but it's a process. It's going to take some time for us to figure out what's going on and to solve the problem. You don't have time when you're dealing with harassment, bullying, things that are stopping that sound basic education. It's immediate, because you can be sued immediately if you do not, if you let the problem persist and do not take any type of action. This was mentioned already, the Discipline Data Reporting Manual. It is a Bible. It has a step-by-step guide to reporting and entering incident data. Step-by-step. PowerSchool's in here. It tells you what to do, how to do it, where to put your information, and everything goes through PowerSchool. Highlights, it has the general statutes in here, the State Board of Education policies, Title IX, Title VII, Americans with Disability Act. It has a lot of different entities in here that you need to be cognizant of when you are trying to figure out the best route to manage your school. It also identifies the 16 reportable acts and much more. A lot of the information that I have going into the next couple of slides are based on this data reporting manual. Okay, so again, bullying, just to make sure you understand what we're talking about. Bullying can be written, electronic, verbal, physical, social, relational harassment. And if you notice, there's some topics here that are repeated in this little triangle. Cyberbullying, the use of electronic communication, such as your email or social media, to intentionally harm others. And just because cyberbullying can get really sticky, I have a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about cyberbullying. Discrimination, unfair or unjust treatment of a person based on characteristics such as their race, their color, their sexual orientation, disability. And then you have harassment. It could be sexual harassment, racial harassment, discrimination against their type of disability, religious or sexual orientation. All right, so cyberbullying. This is the general statutes, 14.458.1. Very important for you to know, because these are the things that you're going to have to look for, and you're going to have to follow up immediately when these types of behaviors are identified. So, for instance, a person who uses a computer, whether it's a school computer, personal computer, laptop, desktop, phone, if they use an electronic device or a computer network to do any of the following, if they have any intent to intimidate or torment a minor, that's like building a fake profile or a website. It gives you detailed information on what you should be looking for. Instant messages, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any of those social media sites. If you follow a minor online in a chat room and you post or encourage others to post private, personal, or sexual information pertaining to the minor, that is cyberbullying. Anything that happens in cyberspace, online, with the intent to intimidate or torture a minor or the minor's parent or guardian. So you have a lot of students at times that talk about the student and then talk about the student's mom, you know, your mama this, your daddy that. All of that is included in this. Make a statement, whether true or false, intending to immediately provoke, and that's likely to provoke any third party to stalk or harass a minor. If you lie on the person to get other people to try to be mean or say things to that person, that is included as well. So this is very detailed, all of this. And I'm not sure there's a school that has not, to some degree, had a student to type something on a laptop or computer, or to put something on social media, or to send a text message that was inappropriate. That's what we're dealing with. When I went through school, We didn't have cell phones in when I was in elementary school, so or middle school, or really our high school either. I think we had no, we didn't. We didn't have cell phones then either. So we didn't have to deal with that type of bullying. It was just the regular bullying. This is another whole generation of bullying that we've got to understand and that we've got to take action against if it happens. And these students today, they spend a lot of time on their social media. They spend a lot of time on their phones. So you've got to be cognizant of this. Anything that happens that can disrupt your school environment, whether it happens on your school grounds or not, if it's going to stop them from being able to concentrate and get that sound basic education, then that is your problem. So if they come in Monday morning and they're in tears and everybody's making fun of them, everybody's making fun of the student, and they come in and show you a post that was made Sunday night before they came in that Monday morning, and they show you how they were humiliated on social media, you cannot say, oh, well, you need to tell your mom that happened at home. We're not going to deal with that here at the school. You can't do that, because you know what? That child at that point cannot get a sound basic education because they are traumatized. That now becomes your problem and you have to deal with it. And then number two, this talks about pretty much the same thing for school employee. So hopefully you don't have to deal with it, but sometimes you may have to deal with a grown-up doing this to another grown-up, making false, intending to provoke or ask or soliciting things from other adults, other employees. So just like if a student comes to you, if an employee comes to you and says, okay, this person is tormenting me online through social media, that's your responsibility as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. We mentioned already the 16 reportable offenses. Out of these, there are several. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are about 9 that I listed that could be a result of letting bullying get out of hand, letting cyberbullying get out of hand, harassment and discrimination. It all starts somewhere. And sexual harassment could lead to rape. Bullying, especially physical bullying, could lead. Now, kidnapping, you're thinking, okay, taking somebody to another state. No, I'm talking about holding and restraining someone in the bathroom for an extended period of time. If you're not letting someone leave, or if you push them down and make them go down into the basement and you don't let them go, and that is technically kidnapping, because you have restrained their movement and you're not allowing them to leave. You're holding them back. After each of these 16 reportable offenses, you see some letters. So you have PD. This is persistently dangerous. And then you have RO, which is a reportable offense. So persistently dangerous, this is a violent or dangerous crime. These are the ones that if a student does experience this, they get to transfer to another school. They don't have to stay. And the RO is reportable offenses. In addition to the PD, all of these must be reported to law enforcement, and these do count against your crime rate for your school and for your school's report card. So of course, as Dr. Lamb mentioned, you get a lot of these. That's not good, but you can't not report it. You've got to report these, or you could get in lots of trouble if you do not report it. And you can't wait. You've got to report it immediately. You can't wait for a week or two. These things must be reported immediately. All right. So now, for the next few minutes, we are going to look at some recent cases. I'd like for you to, they're little mini videos. I'd like for you to look, and at the end of the video, tell me what was done right, if anything. Some of them, not too much was done right, but some of them, you know, we stepped up and did what we were supposed to do. And then, if anything, what was mishandled. And remember those three, you have nonfeasance. That means you had a duty to report, but you didn't do anything. So you could get in trouble for that. You have misfeasance, which is you did wrong, but you didn't necessarily know. You were kind of neglectful, but you didn't intentionally do something wrong. And then you have malfeasance, which is you intentionally you knew exactly what you were doing when you did it and chose to do whatever act, and it was wrong. So let's look, and then just tell me what you think about these cases. And if you can't hear it, please just let me know.
If it's playing, I can't hear it.
I can't hear it either.
You can't hear it. Okay, give me a second. Share sound. Oops. All right. Let's see.
Investigators believe there could be more victims.
Yes.
WRAL's Leslie Moreno joins us.
Let me start over again.
Andrew Allen is behind bars facing charges of child sex crimes with numerous students over the course of 10 years. He taught at Sanley Middle School, and investigators believe there could be more victims. WRAL's Leslie Moreno joins us live at Central Prison. Leslie, you spoke exclusively with a mother whose 2 children were taught by Allen.
Michelle, he's currently being held here in Raleigh at Central Prison on a $250,000 bond. The mother I spoke with is infuriated. It's taking so long to put him behind bars. She tells me she reached out to the school multiple times about issues her children were having with Allen. She tells me she strongly believes this could have been prevented. 32-year-old Andrew Allen, a tenure teacher at Sanley Middle School, was just arrested for having inappropriate relationships with several students. Investigators say multiple children were victims of sexual abuse at the hands of Allen. I spoke with a mother whose son had Allen as a teacher 5 years ago. She says her son was verbally abused by Allen and that it got so bad he almost took his own life. The school told me they didn't have enough proof. They told me they were handling it, and all they did was move my son to a different classroom. And it wasn't just her son. Her daughter was also taught by Allen just last year, and she too says she was verbally abused in front of her classmates. The mother also reported her daughter's case, but nothing was ever done. I'm upset because if they would have taken action, maybe he wouldn't have done all those things to all those kids. Lee County School says they first learned about the sexual abuse allegations on November 2nd. Allen was suspended without pay. He then resigned on November 6th. Lee County Schools provided this statement saying in part, quote, "We understand there will be many questions that our community will need time and support in order to process and respond to this terrible situation. We're providing additional support to the Sanley Middle School community, including additional counselors and other staff to support students." The Lee County Sheriff's Department believes there may be other victims. If you have children who had Allen as a teacher at any point, investigators are asking that you speak with your child about any possible inappropriate conduct. Michelle?
Leslie Moreno, live in Raleigh. Thanks, Leslie.
Okay, so that's the first one. Now, if you notice at the bottom of the screen to the right, there's a year. I'm going to put the years, and they're all just in the last couple of years that these news clips aired. So this is not ancient history. These are things that are happening now. This was Lee County, North Carolina. So tell me, anybody, just something that stood out to you with, there are a couple things that stood out to me with the school or what they did or did not do.
Well, they basically did what you just said, kind of hold on. We're going to kind of figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a second.
Or they just act like it wasn't nothing. They didn't do anything. They didn't respond to what the parents were saying and the students were saying.
Exactly.
It was interesting how they responded with that they moved the student to a different classroom. So there was like
Yes.
something that like was there. Like, did they just do that to appease the parents and not further investigate the whole situation? And kept saying that there wasn't enough proof.
Or shouldn't they have
That's the
contacted law
Band-Aid.
enforcement from the top?
Say again?
They should have contacted law enforcement from the get-go.
Let them
Exactly.
investigate.
Yes.
We know that they didn't contact law enforcement. What did law enforcement say to throw them under the bus at the end? We're quite sure other crimes have been committed. I told you, law enforcement will throw you under the bus. If you don't tell them and then it lands on their doorstep and they look bad, oh, they'll throw you under the bus. And that's what that last one there was, a dagger to the heart when law enforcement said, we're quite sure other crimes were committed. Ooh, that's a killer.
That is.
I also thought it
Definitely.
was interesting. They said something about it happening for 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years worth of complaints. The parent reached out multiple times. The son was verbally abused, almost took his life. Daughter also says she was abused in front of classmates. So these are different types of harassment. This is big. And then as you all have all said, they moved the victim to another class. We talked about this in class before. You don't punish the victim when something like this happens. So you put the Band-Aid on it and move the victim and make them start over. They didn't do anything wrong. Why are you moving the victim to another class and allowing the teacher to continue to teach? The school first said that they learned about the allegations on November the 2nd, and then the teacher resigned on November the 6th. If it was a 10-year period, I'm thinking something blew up on November the 2nd, and they felt they had to act really quickly and force the teacher to resign. So they were being reactive. This has happened for years, apparently. And then all they did was said that they were handling it, and they didn't have enough proof. You do not want to do that. You don't want to sweep it under the rug, say, okay, we'll take care of it, but we can't really prove anything right now. Give it to law enforcement. They will find the proof that they need through their investigation.
Yeah.
They will find all the proof.
Yeah.
Or like,
Dr. Joy,
uh-huh.
I had a situation at my school. I had a situation at my school that was kind of close like that, where a child was getting bullied and he wanted to commit suicide because it had been happening for 6 months, and a teacher brought it to my attention so I can talk to the student. When I called admin to talk to the student, they was like, well, he didn't tell us he wanted to do that. And I was like, well, I was told he was, so I need to do a red folder. They was trying to stop me from doing the we call it red folders, but it's like a suicide assessment.
Right.
Yes, they were trying to stop me from doing it. And I was like, I have to do it. And so I had the teacher that came to me call admin to explain to them that she heard him say this. So they knew then that I had witnesses that heard this in case something comes up, I'm covered,
You're covered.
and I was going to document it. And so they said, well, in 10 minutes, it didn't take about 5 minutes for me to get back to my office. They said, well, we're going to bring them. And I said, and good thing I was able to do a red folder. Him and dad talked and everything was solved. But I was like, I couldn't sleep at night if this baby would have went home and did something, because they try to sweep this under the rug.
Exactly. And because you did that red folder, they had to act. At that point, they couldn't say, oh, I didn't know anything about it. That forced their hand. They whether they want to do something or not, they're smart enough to know if they didn't, they were going to eventually lose their job if they didn't act on that. So good deal.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we think, again, we heard the mother. Do we think that there might be a class or race issue here as well in terms of the kids who were being abused?
A little bit, because I thought it was interesting that she said he did it to both her kids.
That's my point. That's a good catch. That's exactly my point.
That is. You're absolutely right.
We, you
Um,
know, one of the things that we know about predators is they know who the weak, the wounded, they know who they can get away with this from. I mean, that shows a pattern to me that this has been going on for a number of years, and the school knows, but those kids don't matter. Remember, who are we supposed to be champions for? Every kid that comes in the building. But you see, when we aren't, what happens is it only matters what happens to the kids that matter. That's my point. Right from the case study last week is unfortunately most of the time it's not the well-to-do kids that these bad things happen to. It's the other kids who don't have a voice, don't have any advocacy, have no standing in the community, the racial or social standing or lack thereof. And that's how these things keep on getting perpetrated and keep on happening. I mean, all this stuff, as Dr. Griffin Jordan pointed out, as she put on her slide, a lot of it links back to discrimination as well. Got to understand.
exactly.
I'd be curious with the other kids over the 10 years to find out if they were Hispanic as well.
Or
Like you said, the underrepresented. I was thinking
the
about what you said
underrepresented. Yes.
last week about Jim Crow. That kind of popped in my head when you were talking about
that's the whole notion of Jim Crow is no, we don't have those laws on the book, but that's the way our society operates for those that we feel are less than. That's the whole notion of Jim Crow. Is there an element of it's okay to treat these kids that way? That's the notion here. That's a good catch. That's exactly what that Jim Crow means.
And then another layer to that is the fact that the parent, she spoke Spanish and it was translated. Sometimes that barrier right there is another red flag. As a school administrator, you've got to embrace Spanish speaking families because the parents already don't want to come to the school, or they feel intimidated sometimes because they can't communicate the way that everybody else can. When there's an issue with their student, they've got to come out and find somebody that can translate for them. So it's already that barrier. And if you have a teacher that that doesn't choose to be accommodating, that is a problem. That is a big problem. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the next one.
A quick question. If you have a family that has, they speak a different language, and you don't have anybody on site who can interpret or translate, what is the burden or responsibility for the administrator to get somebody in there to be able to take their complaint? Like, how quickly do they have to produce somebody to be able to interpret or translate?
It is a big, in our district, it's big. Just because we don't have the perfect situation is have someone at your front desk that is bilingual. That's like the perfect situation. If you don't, we have a number that we call and we can put it on speakerphone to translate. Somebody always answers. It's the Multilingual Resource Center. And then I also have a Spanish interpreter that can come and we can call to at any time to translate or interpret whatever we need for our staff. We cannot turn someone away and say, I'm sorry, there's no one here that speaks Spanish. You'll have to come back tomorrow. No, we can't do that. We have to accommodate them. Even if they have to wait for a few minutes until we can get someone on the phone, we have to accommodate them.
Daniel, I think the answer, and everybody's saying in the comments that they have a service. International House, you have access to that. The standard is Domino's, 30 minutes or less. Is what your district is supposed to guarantee, that they'll have somebody there. If you don't have somebody, they'll have somebody there in 30 minutes. They have these people who are on retainer to do that. And that's as long as you're not too far off of that 30 minutes, then due process has been served. Now, if you go more, if you get past an hour, you're going to have problems. When it goes to court, and it will, you're going to have problems if you go past an hour. So it's supposed to be 30 minutes, give or take.
Okay. So this is 2023. Let's see.
New tonight, an Edgecombe County high school teacher is suspended indefinitely. He's charged with sexually assaulting a young teenage student on campus. North Edgecombe teacher Justin Tyson went before a judge for the first time today. WREL's Keenan Willard shows us how investigators say families can try to protect their students from this kind of abuse.
Court documents say at least 3 times history teacher Justin Tyson sexually assaulted a student as young as 13 here on campus. Investigators are now crediting the victim and the school district for quickly coming forward.
The Edgecombe Sheriff's Office says on January 19th, they got a call from Edgecombe Public Schools. The district said a student at North Edgecombe High reported having an inappropriate relationship with a teacher. An investigation was launched, and yesterday, the Sheriff's Office arrested 29-year-old Justin Tyson.
He was charged with 3 counts of statutory sex offense with a 13, 14, 15-year-old.
The Sheriff's Office says the assaults happened on campus. They wouldn't say when or where exactly they took place, citing an ongoing investigation. This morning, Tyson had his first appearance in Edgecombe County Court, requesting a public defender to represent him. Tyson's being held on a $100,000 secured bond. The Sheriff's Office says the arrest couldn't have happened so quickly without the swift action of the school district and the victim's decision to report the alleged abuse.
Don't hold it in. It needs to get out, because that can mess with a child forever if they never admit to it.
Investigators are calling for families to talk to their students about anything at school that might be weighing on them.
Please, if you have a child and you're noticing changes in their attitude, changes in their school schedule, and the way they do their homework or their grades are dropping, talk to them. Find out why that's happening, because sometimes it's an issue.
Keenan Willard, WREL News, Edgecombe County.
WREL News also asked the family of Justin Tyson for a response to his arrest. They declined to speak with us.
Okay, so flip side of this, as law enforcement will throw you under the bus if they need to, they will praise you if you do the right thing and makes them look good and makes you look good because you did everything appropriately. So apparently in this case, as soon as number one, the student is credited for quickly alerting officials. So she told the school immediately told law enforcement, an investigation was immediately launched, and the law enforcement credits the student and the school for quickly responding and notifying them, and he's already going to court. That's what you can do. That is the appropriate action. You don't hear anything negative about the school because the school took action. In the first one, the Sandley Middle School, I would love to revisit all of these cases, because the school, we didn't hear anything about what happened to the administrators at the school, anything with the school district. We do know that the teacher got in trouble, but if this had been, reported before now, then why would we expect that no one else got in trouble but the teacher? So this is a good case. No cases are good, but this is a result that you want as a school administrator if that does happen in your school. If it comes out to the news, you want it to be, we did everything appropriately and we took the appropriate steps. You call your law enforcement, you call your supervisor, and let law enforcement take that investigation, and you notify your superintendent what is going down. So because he's going to get a call as well, so that he knows what is happening. And of course, go ahead.
Let me interject again. Under 115C288, to report certain acts to law enforcement and the superintendent. Remember, it's in that order for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You don't be calling everybody around central office first. So that, remember, certain acts have to go to law enforcement first. Don't get it twisted.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the number of times I picked up the phone. The first thing I said, did you call law enforcement? No, well then don't hang up. Don't call me. Call me after you call them. Okay, that's number one. This district did the right thing. They called law enforcement immediately. Now, law enforcement, and there's another reason why you do this. You don't want to ever look like that there was any kind of a cover up or an adjudication going on your part or a calculation. You call law enforcement first. That way, if the records are ever subpoenaed, it's very clear. No, they called it in first. That's number one. And then number two, it's, that's a public trust issue. Number two is actually a legal issue. If you start an investigation and then you call law enforcement, you may have contaminated their evidence. And that's what really makes them mad, because then they're not likely to get a conviction. And they know that. And the district attorney is not likely to bring charges because they know that the evidence can be excluded in a court of law. And so it's very clear who you got to call first and get involved. And again, you call them, you step back, and then you call the superintendent and you wait on further instruction. But this is not one of them things you go busting in like a bull in a china shop. Oh, I'm gonna fix this, or I'm gonna make sure this don't get out, or this could be a bad PR. No. I know that we're asking you initially to, if you think about it on the surface level, we're asking you to act against your own self-interest. But truly, in the long term, we're asking you to act in your own self-interest in reality. Administrators can't be held accountable for things that their teachers do unless they let them keep on doing it. And so, you get in trouble if you failure to act. But this notion, I want to control the narrative, that's not going to happen. Not in modern times. It's not going to happen. You might as well accept that now. And it'll be a lot easier to do the right thing later if you understand it. You cannot control the narrative. All righty.
Okay.
Excellent.
New tonight and
okay. Were you going to say something else, Dr. Lamb?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is what we've already talked about. Everybody was credited for coming forward so quickly. The appropriate ending. So next. So this, if you haven't heard, this is the sex abuse scandal from the Raleigh Montessori School. Started back in 2016. It's over finally now.
A former administrator of a Raleigh school turned a blind eye to sexual abuse happening on her campus. That's what a jury has to decide. Testimony in the trial of the former headmistress at the Montessori School of Raleigh started today. WRL's Chelsea Donovan just stepped out of court and joins us now with the latest. Chelsea?
Deborah, court actually just wrapped up a few minutes ago. The state calling 3 witnesses today, all former students, and we learned through their testimony where the sexual abuse occurred on the campus 10 years ago. Sexual abuse by former teacher Nicholas Smith. We know that it occurred in the classroom, the woods behind the school, and even in the Pottery building. The state believes Iroquetti, who knew about the abuse prior to her time as headmistress, was in a position to act, but she didn't. And that resulted in more abuse.
You were using any excuse you could to get out and be alone with him. The first time you ever had contact with him, that was on the campus, correct?
Wednesday afternoon, the defense painting a picture of sexual abuse taking place on the campus of Montessori School of Raleigh between a middle school teacher and a student. But they say abuse didn't happen under the watch of 59-year-old Nancy Iroquetti. The victim, who we can't show her name, was a 9th grader at the time. Her middle school teacher, Nicholas Smith, engaged in sexual acts with her. Smith was convicted of the crimes in 2020.
But she also had knowledge of things that had happened and complaints that had come in prior to her tenure.
Prosecutors believe Iroquetti knew about Smith's inappropriate behavior with the student, but didn't take action to stop the future abuse of another student, the younger sister of the first victim, 5 years later.
Had there been any sort of scratching of the surface, Nick Smith's sexual abuse could have been uncovered.
State prosecutor Melanie Shakita claims that Iroquetti allowed Nicholas Smith to be alone with young girls on school trips. She said Iroquetti never fired him after hearing complaints.
She's the one person who could have ended this abuse.
The evidence will show that there were never any reports of sexual misconduct that were made to Nancy while she was the head of school.
Iraketti's attorney says the allegations of sexual assault occurred 5 years apart, making it difficult for Iraketti to take action, but that she consulted with teachers and the school's attorney for advice. State evidence also shows that Iraketti did draft behavioral action plans for that teacher, Nicholas Smith, both in 2012 and 2016, where she asked he not be alone any further with female students. However, the state believes that the abuse did continue. Court again has wrapped up for the day. It'll start again tomorrow morning at 9:30. This is a trial that's expected to last about 3 weeks. Deborah.
Chelsea Donovan reporting live in Raleigh. Thanks.
Okay, what do you think about this one with the headmistress, Nancy Iraketti?
She just didn't do anything, and he did it with the sisters 5 years apart. Like they said, she could have stopped that and prevented it from happening to the second sister.
Malfeasance. It's like she helped him do that.
Or covered it up pretty much.
Again, same family, what we talked about with the first one. Again, these folks, they don't pick folks at random for abuse. You know, he's got a pattern here. He got the sister. Now, what about in a court of law? Do you think that it will matter that she put him on basically an action plan twice and told him to stay away from girls and this kind of behavior? Do you think that
no,
not at all.
Not no action plan.
Do you think that would be in her favor or against her in a court of law?
Against her. That means she had knowledge. That is definite knowledge.
Well, she just admitted her guilt, didn't she? This is dumb crook news as well. Not only is this malfeasance, this is dumb crook news as well. If you're going to engage in a conspiracy, don't write it down. Oh my goodness, how dumb would you be? That's just incredible. That's just the height of idiocy or hypocrisy or arrogance, I guess. That you don't understand that those things are going to become part of the public record when you go to court. That she 2 times wrote him up for his behavior with girls and told him to stay away from them. Well, sure she knew what was happening. I mean, that that's the same as a confession. I don't know how she'll get out of this one. I don't know.
Okay, so there's a twist. There is a twist. But before we get to the twist, this is what we've all said already. Parents, they made formal complaints about the teacher for so many years. The school, so let's look at what the school is saying. They admit that the abuse occurred, classroom, woods, pottery building. They're saying that the administrator knew about the complaints prior to her time as headmistress. So I don't know if she was a teacher there before or when she interviewed or when she became headmistress, they gave her the files for him of complaints. I don't know really what that means. She allowed the teacher to be alone with students on field trips, even after hearing complaints. That was alleged. No complaints of misconduct while she was headmistress, according to her attorney. Okay. And then complaints were filed 5 years apart, which made it difficult, according to her, to take action. It doesn't matter if it was a day apart, 10 years apart. If there's a complaint, it doesn't need to be more than one. You take action off of one. You don't need several different people. One is enough. And then the administrator consulted with the teachers and the school's attorney, probably the private school's attorney. So she got advice from the attorney. So I'm sure that the attorney is the one that told her to put, you need to document and put it in an action plan, put the teacher in an action plan so that you can say that you're doing something about these allegations. So that's where their take was. So this is amazing because this is one, because I live in Wake County. So I kind of followed up on this one. And she was found not guilty of neglect.
Oh, no.
On Monday, on August 8th, it says on Monday, the jury unanimously found Nancy not guilty of the misdemeanor charge of contributing to the neglect of a minor. She walked away free. And I have, this is the news clip that you can click on to watch later. And she's happy and she's walking away free. The judge threw it out that she was contributing, I guess, willfully, the malfeasance. She knew what she was doing. He's saying that, he didn't believe that. So she walked away from this.
Is it because of the 5 years apart thing?
No, this is a class deal. This is wealthy, well-to-do, well-connected political people with high-powered lawyers and poor folks.
Yes.
Well, I was just thinking that could be the justification they made to themselves. Technically it was one time and then it was 5 years later, so how is she contributing? Because it wasn't ongoing like the guy with the 10-year record of doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, see, where we're saying that her documenting is a proof of guilt. That's what we all agree. We're saying,
agree with that. Yeah. No,
yes,
I was just trying to get into the mind of people who would have acquitted her. What could they have told themselves to make it feel better is what I was speculating on.
Yes. Yeah. So they took that whole thing and said, well, she did what she was supposed to do. They took it not like we're looking at it. They're looking at it as, she intervened. She put them on an action plan. That's what she was supposed to do.
All right. So if this had been a public school, do you think the outcome would have been the same?
It would not have been the same.
No.
No, I have a sneaking suspicion not.
You have laws that govern your behavior that private schools do not. You got to remember that too. This, while we call it a school, is a private corporation. They don't have the same reporting laws that a actual school has.
They don't have federal funds to have to, to report and give account for, so they don't have the same.
My suspicion is they do like some private, or some of these do. They take the Anderson grant money rather than the federal money. There is a private conservative group called the Anderson Group that gives grants to private schools if they will refuse federal money. And those schools do not follow the same non-discriminatory and other behaviors that public schools do. They're not under the same. And so if they choose not to take federal money, then no. And also, now remember, we talked briefly about child find. You remember child find? Private schools don't have to serve EC kids. That's federal. The public school in their district has to. So they're not going to get EC money if they don't have an EC department, and most of them don't. And that's really the only significant federal money that there is, other than might be for free and reduced lunch. And you're not going to need free and reduced lunch at the Montessori school. So this is a private corporation, not really a school. And so they don't have the same duty to report. They don't have that manual that you have to go by that I showed you, that DPI manual. If this were in public school, you'd be fried. But in a private corporation, that's why you hear all that. You hear all the time about the bad behavior of private organizations. This is an example of that. But you're held to a different standard.
Dr. Lamb. It's a business. It's not. We're into educating students. That's more of a corporation, as opposed to a school. It's a business. Okay. So that I had to throw that one in because I just knew that was going to be like my biggest article, because I knew she was going to get time. I mean, this is like, and yeah, when I saw that, I was like, oh goodness, that's very interesting. Okay, so this is Johnson County. This is a county over from where I am. And this happened last year as well. You might have heard about this. This got kind of national news.
New this noon, a Johnston County mother meets with school officials to demand action after her daughter complained of being bullied. Good afternoon to you. I'm Jeff Hogan.
And I'm Renee Chu. Thanks for joining us. This is a heartbreaking story involving an 11-year-old girl. She says her classmates harassed and bullied her about her skin color. WRAL's Adam Owens spoke with a psychotherapist about the impact this could have long-term for her. Adam.
Renee, you're right. This is certainly a heartbreaker. We are told that the mother of that middle school student is meeting with school administrators to try to figure out what can be done about this bullying that the student says she has been dealing with the entire semester so far, again, all over her skin color. Donetta Hooper got a text from her 11-year-old daughter, Delea. She wanted to switch schools because of how she was being treated by other students because of her dark skin. The girl says students at Riverwood Middle made jokes saying she was from Africa and that she was the color of burnt. Delea says the bullying has been going on all semester. Her mother posted those messages to Facebook, where it was shared thousands of times. Officials with Johnston County Public Schools tell me they are actively looking into this situation. Donetta Hooper says school leaders initially suggested that her daughter leave classes early to avoid the bullying or register for other courses. Hooper says her daughter should not have to change because she is the victim here. I asked psychotherapist Dr. Kamala Uzel about how things should be handled in this situation.
Initially, you need to address the bullies and the bullying. So if anyone needs to be removed from a classroom, it should be the people who were doing the wrong thing, not the person who was doing the right thing.
Again, the mother is meeting with the school administrators to try to see what can be done to help this little girl. We're still waiting to hear on what resolution, if any, that they have come to. As heartbreaking, Renee, as this story is, it has also been incredibly uplifting. After those messages were posted online, there was a lot of love that was coming in this little girl's direction, including from some of our WRAL viewers. After we posted this story to Facebook, our viewers shared messages to lift up this little girl. They say Delea is beautiful and what happened to her is wrong. One person even commenting that there should be classes to teach all students about the harm that bullying could do. Some people who commented shared their own stories of how they were bullied when they were in school, sometimes years ago, sometimes decades ago, and how those things with them. The expert that we talked to earlier this morning says that really can happen. These things can stay with people for a lifetime. Again, the mother of this little girl is meeting with school officials, and we'll continue to follow this story to see what came out of that meeting, Renee.
And we hope Delea reads every message of love and support there on social media, and we want her to know that she is perfect the way she is. Adam Owens reporting live in Johnston County.
Okay, have you all heard of this case?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I live in that county.
Had you heard of it at all?
Yeah, I've heard of it. My nephew goes to that school too.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it got big. Just in me looking at the news later after it happened, I know that the following Christmas she was asked to come and light the Christmas tree for a neighboring community. There were people from other states sending her different things. It got big because this was something that should not have happened. Anything from that news clip that stood out to you all as what in the world is that school doing? Anything from the school's standpoint?
They told her that she can leave class early so that she's not around when the bullying occurs, or that she should just switch classes.
Exactly. Again, this is the second time that we're hearing they're punishing the victim. Okay, so you're not going to change classes with everyone else. You leave your class early to go ahead so you don't have to meet the bully in the hallway. Let's change your class and so you don't have to be in the class with the bully. Instead of taking care of the situation and giving her that sound basic education. So I do know that the county and who's in the county?
I am Daniel.
Okay, Daniel. I do know that they've revisited their equity policy for the district Do you know of anything else specifically that Johnson County's doing?
No, I don't work for them. I work for Wake County.
Okay, I thought you, oh, you live in Johnson.
I live
County.
in Johnston,
Got
and
you.
I've got family members who go to that school. We actually took our kids out of that school system because of racism happening at another school, and we got sick and tired of the administration's non-response to the situations. So I'm not typically a proponent of charter schools, but my kids are now in a charter school.
Right, right. Johnson County has a ways to go. I have a couple of teacher friends that are there, and it's just what you said. There are a lot of racial inequities that they're battling in that county.
Yeah,
As
some
all
of the,
counties.
some
I'm
of the
sure.
schools are better about handling racial diversity and equity, but the schools right around us, like North Johnston area, and
Yes.
then Riverwood, it's not handled well.
Yes, definitely.
New this noon,
Oh, my bad. So this is what we've talked about. The student told the mother the bullying, met with school administrators. At least they were able to meet with the school administrators, I guess. The bullying's ongoing throughout the semester. The school suggested that the victim leave class early or switch classes. And of course, that thing of, it's a process. It's going to take us a while, but we are looking into the situation. Don't get into the habit of looking into a situation. You need to act if this type of situation is brought to your attention. Okay, we have two more.
Shot in 4K ultra high definition. Your #1 source for local news. WRAL News. Coverage you can count on.
We begin this half hour with disturbing breaking news. A former Harnett County teacher now facing 95 charges related to inappropriate sex acts with students.
We want to go to WRAL's Mark Boyle and the WRAL Live Center. So, Mark, what are the details that we're learning about this hour?
Well, Chris, the new information right now is that the teacher was a teacher at Triton High School in Harnett County, and he was arrested this morning after he was confronted by law enforcement and these allegations. This is a mugshot of the teacher we're talking about here, and take a look at these counts and the numbers here. 44 counts of sexual activity with a student, 47 counts of indecent liberties with a student, 4 counts of indecent liberties with a child. On your screen, again, more details about the man we're learning about here. The teacher identified as Denny Dalton of Linden. He was arrested immediately following when these allegations came forward. Also key here, all of these allegations of these crimes, according to those involved, happened on campus at the school during regular school hours. We are being told there are multiple students that have reported these offenses to school officials. So at this point, the investigation continues. The suspect in this case is in custody. Bond is extremely high, $970,000, so just below $1 million secured bond. It is likely that more details will come out about this. Again, he resigned immediately following the allegations and taken into custody just a few minutes later. We'll follow this story for you here on WRAL as this news breaks at 4:30.
All right, thank you, Mark. Of course, we'll be staying with that very closely to get more details.
Okay, so this is Harnett County, another neighboring county of ours. What do you think about this case?
Obviously been going on for a while, looked like, didn't it?
95 charges.
I was going to say law enforcement has been involved since 95 charges have been filed.
Yes. So they did not say, and we, of course, we don't know the ins and outs, but they don't say that there were issues where the student told someone and nothing was done. What it sounds like is once administration found out, then, they alerted police, law enforcement, the investigation got started, and they started there to question all these students came forward. So I don't know how that happened, but They reported it to law enforcement. The teacher was arrested. And the thing is, it happened on school grounds during the regular school day. So my question is, just as an administrator in general, if it happened all these times, was it, I mean, are you monitoring the school? Are you doing walkthroughs? I mean, where are you alone for all these times with a student where nobody knows? All these times, that's a lot. 95 charges. That's a long time for no one to just pop up and see you if you're, you know, monitoring the school. So that's important for you to get out the office and go into the nicks and crannies of your school, and because you have to do it anyway, because you have to do every couple of weeks, you need to walk your halls to do your inspections. So during your inspection, go through all the classrooms, go through the closets, check the bathrooms. You know, these are things that you can do to be proactive in situations like this. And this is our last story.
There is a new effort to combat school bullying in New Jersey.
That's right. It comes after 14-year-old Adriana Kush was assaulted at Central Regional High School in Ocean County. She would later take her own life after the video went up on social media.
So now we hear state legislators are working on a bill to require all schools call police whenever bullying results in an injury.
So we're also hearing of more cases of bullying, specifically at Central Regional, where little was done after those cases were reported.
So joining us this morning to talk about Rachel is Rachel Odea, whose daughter says she was bullied at Central Regional as well, and their attorney, Jonathan Edmond. So we thank you both for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
It's such an important topic to talk about. And so, Rachel, I want to begin with you, right? How exactly, I guess, did you find out what was happening to your daughter? And what did you do in light of it? And what was the school's response?
So my daughter, Olivia, was receiving threatening text messages on a social media app back in December of 2021. She then was stalked in school from class, at which point she went to the administrators of the school, the principal and the vice principal, and not only told them about the stalking, but showed them the threatening text messages. The school did not do anything. They swept it under the rug. The girls proceeded to go on Christmas break. And when they returned from Christmas break, the girls that were involved in the stalking followed through on their promise and jumped my daughter from behind. One girl held my daughter's book bag as the other girl struck my daughter, and another girl recorded it.
Oh my goodness.
And then uploaded it to social media, of course.
You know, I can't imagine being, I mean, I have two young girls, 10 and almost 8, and I can't imagine being a mother and seeing this happening to your child, that helpless feeling that nothing is being done.
Unbelievably frustrating. I mean, the emotions that you feel, they're almost too big for your body. You don't know what to do. You don't know who to reach out to. Your first instinct is to reach out to the school, and you send your child to school with the understanding that they're there to provide a free and safe education to our children, specifically safe.
Yeah.
And when that is not being done, you don't know what to do with yourself. You really don't.
Yeah, you know, and the Central Regional Board of Education accepted the resignation of their superintendent, and the district said, quote, they are evaluating all current and past allegations of bullying, end quote. So, Jonathan, let me turn to you now. So tell us about exactly the lawsuit that you're filing on Rachel's behalf and what kind of response you're getting.
Yeah, well, it's pretty straightforward, as Rachel just described the events, you know, and she also mentioned kids going to school and being protected, and that is the law. The law imposes a duty on the schools to protect the children. They're responsible for their safety while they're in school. So in light of the fact that the threats were brought to the school's attention, and in light of the school's failure to respond at all, and the resulting assault on my client, on Olivia, and the harm that's resulted from this. And let me tell you, it's not just physical harm that comes out of a physical assault. These children are scarred emotionally. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact as adults, we don't see things through the lens of a child. But when you're a child in school and you're being bullied and you're being threatened and you're being assaulted, and then that assault, which is filmed and then disseminated on social media for all your peers, for strangers throughout the country to see. These videos that go up on TikTok or Reels or one of these platforms, you have 30,000, 100,000 people or more viewing it and commenting on it. And so the humiliation is just exponentially worse. And these kids suffer greatly as a result of it. And that's essentially the genesis of the lawsuit, the school.
Okay, and I'm going to stop it there because it goes much longer, but the gist, you have the gist. In this case, we don't know, it could be discrimination. We don't know if they were discriminating because, of her race, her sexual identity, her religious. We don't know why this happened. It could be discrimination, but we also know that it was bullying. They were harassing her. It was harassment. And then the cyberbullying came in as well, because after they harassed her in the hallway, assaulted her in the hallway, they posted it on social media. So then the cyberbullying comes in. And like the lawyer said, this is much deeper than physical. This is an emotional scarring that this child is going through now. It was interesting that they said at the beginning that New Jersey's now requiring, this district is now requiring all schools to call the police if physical bullying occurs. So I'm thinking that the police weren't called in the past if something like that happened. For them to have to say that, that's very interesting.
Failed to protect.
To know. Okay, so what do we know in this last case? This is a New Jersey case. It's not North Carolina, but this was after someone took their own life. And then this is the same high school. This is in the future. Things are still going on after something catastrophic happened. We're still having other cases. So she was receiving threatening text messages, cyberbullying. She reported to the administration that she's been stalked in school. She went and showed the text messages to the administration. She was beat by bullies in the hallway. They kept their promise. After winter break, they came back and they jumped her like they probably said that they were going to do in the text messages. Then they uploaded it to social media. In the lawsuit, they said the school failed to protect Olivia. This is a recent case. It's 2023, so it's happened this year. Would love to follow up because this has got to be something that is not just the students get in trouble. And as you see at the bottom, the Central Regional Board of Education accept the resignation of the superintendent. So we do know that he's gone or she's gone because of this not doing anything, not acting. And they're working on a bill.
It's worse than that. I'm gonna give you the rest of that story in just a second.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And then, like we stated, the legislator is working on a bill to require all schools to call the police if bullying results in an injury. And I put an exclamation point, like you wouldn't call the police if somebody got hurt because of this type of interaction. So that is our last one. And I'm curious to know what you have on this, Dr. Lamb.
All right, this was the one I was referring to earlier. I already had this one queued up. You can stop your share. So I'm going to read this to you.
Okay.
All right. So understanding that this was a disabled child. So this child was either EC or 504. Now, we understand. All right. What do FERPA laws say about EC 504 kids? Can you disclose any information about those kids to anybody?
No.
So the reason why the superintendent was fired or they allowed him to resign is this. The district came under increased scrutiny when then superintendent, and you'll pardon me for not being able to pronounce this name, Trian Filios Paparlapides, disclosed personal information about Adriana's family and health history on February 10th in emails to reporters at a news publication.
No, he didn't.
Basically saying this child's disabled. She's just making this stuff up. Oh. See, I'd own that man's house. I would. Now they have filed notice of a tort against him too, by the way, which means they're going after his personal property.
Yeah.
But he FERPA violated this as well. But that was his excuse as to why they didn't do anything. That this was a disabled child, probably just made it up. But disclosed to the news media that this was a disabled child, violated federal FERPA law. So it gets even worse when the cover-ups is as bad or worse than the act. The last one that I have for you tonight, and I've got it somewhere, but I won't bother to pull it up because of our time. There's one in Haywood County, North Carolina, which is to the west of us. It's in the far west past Asheville. And that case is illustrative to our point in that the district fired the principal, and her claim was, I was just, that the teacher that was doing these bad things was a coach. I was trying to keep it in-house and not create a public relations nightmare for the district. That I hear that so many times from school administrators. We were trying to handle it in-house. Look, in a case like that where the football coach was acting inappropriately with female faculty and students, both verbally and physically, the district is not going to support you if you cover that up. So this notion that I'm trying to take one for the team or I'm being a team, that's not what happened in that case. She was high school principal at I believe it was Tuscola. And so that's misguided. That's kind of my benediction tonight is a lot of this stuff we're trying to cover up, we're trying to hide, we're trying not to lose favor in public, we're trying not to damage our credibility and our public relations with our community. That's not a reason not to do the right thing. And when your district finds out, they will, the very people that you thought you were trying to protect, the central office and the superintendent and their cabinet and their their reign or whatever, they'll rain down on you. So you better understand, this is when you got to be looking out for you and yours. You got to do the right thing always. Don't be thinking about, well, I'm going to protect the reputation of the superintendent and his cabinet or his administration, or I'm going to protect, the school district's reputation in the community. I mean, you might have the best intent, but you got to protect yourself because it's not going to work out for you. When the school district, when something like that, when at Tuscola became known, first thing they did was fire the principal. Said she had a duty to act and didn't, that she covered it up. So, you're out there on an island by yourself. And so the notion here is us telling you all this stuff. It sounds like we're beating a dead horse here, but I'm telling you, it's hard in real life, but you got to do it. The question came in the chat: when do you report? As soon as you know. As soon as you know, you whatever you're doing, you stop and you call law enforcement immediately. Remember, they have warrant powers that you don't, especially for media devices like phones and computers. And if you start your own investigation, see, this is what police will tell you. I know. I dealt with this many times. I have a friend lives right there. He's special. He just retired as special agent in charge of the FBI in Charlotte. And what happens is when you start your investigation, you forewarn these people, guess what they do? All of a sudden their phone gets destroyed, their laptop disappears. And that's what law enforcement really gets upset about is basically you're sounding an alarm to the perpetrators, and they know to try to get rid of everything that they can get rid of that links back to them. And so that's why it's so crucially important that as soon as the report comes to you, you get in touch with law enforcement immediately. Don't give the perpetrators time to start destroying or covering up evidence. That's what the police will tell you. That's all you're doing is just giving them a head start. You cannot do that. So that's kind of my close on that. Dr. Griffin Jordan, as always, absolutely fabulous. This is real life stuff, folks. This is what happens every day in schools. These are the things that you've got to be involved in. You heard it from the horse's mouth tonight. You heard it from a sitting principal that these are the kinds of things that you've got to deal with. You've got to understand. You've got to follow through. There's a reason why that statute under 288 says to make reports to law enforcement and to the superintendent. That's what we're talking about. In acts of crime or violence, those 16 acts of crime or violence that are in that manual, you got to tell them immediately, not after a while or tomorrow, or I'll get around to it, or I got an evaluation scheduled in an hour, I'll get to it tomorrow. No, right now, today, this is your priority. This very minute.
Yes.
Dr. Griffin, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, I was just going to make a comment on the chat. It is really nice. It's a nice compliment for a principal to be called a ninja. It says, I had a principal that was a ninja. She would appear out of nowhere. That is like amazing, because you know that whatever's happening, you could turn around like your mom. You would turn around at any point and she'd be right there. That's the type of principal you need to be. You need to know what goes on in every part of your building at all times to make sure everyone is safe. So we're going to close with that.
All right. So next week we have our case study on Leandro on school funding. Make sure you read all the associated documents that go with that and be prepared. We will reverse the order that we went in last week for that case for next week. Again, is Jolynn on? She's in this group, I believe. I sent that email out this week. She did a great job on her OMA. She was the star of the week on that. We had some other good entries as well, some reflections. I won't go through all that tonight, but I'm pleased with both your evidence work and your assignments. You're doing very well. Your presentations were good last week. Some were gooder than others, but they were all good. I was very pleased with those. I'm looking forward to your presentations next week. So y'all all have a good week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Everybody have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us as always.